What's up, guys? Today we're going to be doing my favorite used smartphones or refurbished smartphones for 2021. First off, with the LG G8. So all of these phones are going to be around $300 and below. So the LG G8 is a really awesome phone, one of my favorite on the list. I think it packs the most specs for the price, and it's around $253 right now, and I'll put all the links down below. But I love the design on this phone still. It has a really nice design. It's got a completely flat back, so no camera bump, which I think is really nice. It's aluminum frame glass back on here. It's also IP68 dust and water resistant as well. Now, this phone has a 6.1-inch OLED display. It is HDR10, and I absolutely love the display on here. And also, it is, I guess, kind of compact by today's standards. It's not super big. It is a 2K display or 1440p display, and the display on this phone is really nice. You get very nice, vibrant colors, very deep blacks. You do have the notch, which you can hide with the software, but it's not a huge deal. And like I said, with such a high PPI, text and everything just looks super sharp on this display. Now, you do have Android 10, and I suspect this will get the Android 11 update. Just might take a while. And this phone has the OG skin, which is not really bad. I've never had an issue with it. It's kind of close to stock Android, honestly. And you have the Snapdragon 855 along with the Adreno 640. For gaming, this phone will blow through any game. Call of Duty, Fortnite, it plays it all on high settings. So this is also a very good gaming phone. And in addition to that, you have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. So this is overall a beast on storage as well. And this phone does have the quad DAC with the 3.5mm jack. So if you have a high quality set of headphones, you can get some really excellent audio out of this phone as well. You also have a pretty good single firing speaker, or really dual speakers technically, but they sound really good as well. So you do have NFC on this phone as well, and we have our fingerprint scanner on here, and we have some pretty good Face ID with this phone as well. So this phone does have really good cameras to me. Now, I sort of switch between the standard camera and the G cam depending on what kind of shot I take, but as you can see, excellent photos with the G8. So you have a 12 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You also have 4K video and 8 megapixel selfie. I like the pictures on the G8. I think you get good detail. Dynamic range is pretty solid. White balance could use a little bit of work on this phone, but you can use the manual mode to really fix that. Overall, I really like the pictures. You get very natural colors, good detail, depth of field. All that stuff is there. And like I said, you can switch over to the G cam, which is going to make everything even better. So you do have a 3500 milliamp battery with 21 watt fast charging, along with wireless charging on this phone as well. Battery life is pretty good on here. I get around 8 hours of screen on time on my G8, so overall pretty good in that department. Next is the Xiaomi Mi 9T. You can find this phone around under $300, I believe. I've seen it for as cheap as $240. But this is an awesome phone for people who love the full screen design. So this phone actually has a glass back and aluminum frame, so it feels super premium in the hand as well. Now, the Mi 9T actually has a AMOLED display on it. It's a 6.39-inch display. It's a 1080p display, 403 for the PPI. Overall, I love the display on this phone. It was really nice. It's a flat display as well, so no curves, and it just looks really awesome when you're watching content. Colors are beautiful, blacks are really deep, and like I said, there's no notch, so whatever you're doing on this phone, whether it's gaming or whatever, you're just gonna have a very immersive experience. So this phone will have Android 10 and MIUI 12, and you also have the Snapdragon 730 and Adreno 618. Overall, this phone was fine for gaming. You can play most games on high settings, but of course you want to be able to max like everything out, of course. Now, the only sort of downside with this phone is there's no expandable storage, so you have like 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM, which could be a little bit low if you are somebody that takes a lot of pictures and videos and stuff like that, so be sure to note that. This phone does still keep the headphone jack, which is awesome. You also have NFC on board with this guy as well, and the fingerprint scanner is in the display, and it's actually pretty fast. So I was really happy with that. It's not slow at all. So you do have pretty good cameras on this phone as well. You have a triple camera setup. It's a 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel telephoto, and a 13 megapixel ultra wide. You also have 4K video with the pop-up camera. That's a 20 megapixel at 1080p. Overall, I love the image quality on this phone. It does really good. You can also throw Gcam on this phone and have a really good port for that. And yeah, you get really good shots with this phone as well. So that's one of the things that I really love. Just really nice vibrant colors, pretty good detail, dynamic range. Everything is really solid with this phone, and the 4K video isn't too bad as well. So this phone actually has amazing battery life for just having a 4,000 milliamp battery. You also have 18-watt fast charging, and I was really happy with the battery life. This phone can easily get through a full day's use, no problem. So that was one of my favorite things about this phone. Next is the iPhone X. I really love this phone, especially if you're somebody that really, you know, likes iPhones. You're looking for a good iPhone but cheap. This phone came down to $350 right now. I think that is an excellent price for this phone. So the design on here still looks good. It feels good. It's a stainless steel frame, glass back. Still a really nice looking phone. IP67 dust and water resistant. I guess this phone is more on the compact side. I guess these days it's got a 5.8 inch display. It's a Super Retina OLED display. It is HDR10. Basically, it's just a really nice display. It's got really good colors. It's also got very deep blacks. Most people that like iPhones, you know, you won't mind the notch because most people don't really care these days. The display resolution is 1125 by 2436. Overall, a really nice display, 458 for the PPI. Again, just a really nice display. So you do have the latest version of iOS, and I believe this phone will get iOS 15 along with 16. I don't see why it wouldn't. And you have all the widgets and stuff, dark mode, all that stuff is here with this phone. And like I said, I think this phone is at least solid for 2 more years of updates. So you do have the Apple A11 chip as well. So this phone was a performance beast when it got iOS 14. It did not miss a beat when it comes to just bouncing it in and applications, gaming. You can do some pretty high-end gaming on this phone as well. I guess the only gripe with this phone is that there's no expandable storage, and the base storage is 64 gigs, so you're kind of forced to use the cloud storage. And you also have 3 gigs of RAM on here. So overall, you know, it's fine in that department. You just have to know that you're going to be using the cloud storage with this phone if you download a lot of stuff, of course. Yeah, you have some really nice sounding stereo speakers as well, very loud, have really good depth with the bass, mids and highs. Absolutely love the speakers on here. And of course there's no headphone jack on this one, and you do have NFC on this guy as well with your you know, Apple Pay. And the Face ID is your only option of getting into the phone, and that works fine. It's very fast still. So I said that the camera on the X is pretty good. You have a dual camera setup. It's a 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto. I guess you're missing the ultra wide, which is really popular these days, but overall I didn't, you know, really miss it too much. But you have 4K video. You have a selfie camera that's 7 megapixels, which is really good for these selfies and stuff like that, FaceTime. So image quality was still pretty good. You get really nice colors, good dynamic range. Everything was pretty solid on here, good detail. Is it going to perform like the newest iPhones or even like the SE 2020? No, but I think for most people, if you're in good lighting, this will be definitely a excellent camera for you. You do have a sort of okay battery life, I guess, a 2760 milliamp battery. I get around like 5 to 6 hours of screen on time on mine, which if you're like a sort of medium to light user, that's fine. If you're a heavy user, you're definitely gonna have to charge this phone, but you do get really good standby time on this phone. You have wireless charging on board as well, which is really nice. So overall, the iPhone X is just a solid deal right now. All right, next is the Galaxy S10e, and I really love this phone. If you pick up the Verizon version, it's really cheap, like around 300 to 350. But the other ones are kind of like closer to 400, so if you just have to get the Verizon version if you want the cheapest one. But this phone is still excellent regardless. It's just a really nice phone. I love it. So it's got an aluminum frame, it's got glass back, it's IP68 dust and water resistant as well. I guess this phone is again on the like more compact side. So if you want a phone that's actually going to fit in your hand and feel comfortable, it's not going to be super huge, then this phone is really awesome as well. It's got a dynamic AMOLED display. It's HDR10 plus. It's got the little punch hole on it, which is fine. I didn't really have any issues with it. You get used to it, you know, being on the right hand side. I'm kind of used to them being in the middle, but It does have a 1080p display. It's absolutely beautiful. It's 438 for the PPI. It's a really nice display. Classic Samsung display. Very beautiful colors. Very deep blacks. Beautiful display. So you have the Android 10 with One UI. I'm not sure if it's gotten Android 11 yet, but it will. And depending on which model you get, you should get the Snapdragon 855 model and Adreno 640. This will blow through anything gaming, just handling One UI. It's just going to be a beast. It's going to be super smooth. You can game on high. Multitasking is no problem on this phone as well. You have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. So plenty of storage on this phone and plenty of power on this phone as well. Now this phone also has some really good sounding speakers. It's got stereo speakers. Very nice. Very good depth with the bass, mids and highs. Everything sounds excellent. And you also have the 3.5mm jack on this phone as well, which is really nice. You can use your headphones. This phone also has NFC on board as well for your mobile payments. One of the things I really love is the fingerprint scanner is on the side mounted with the power button, so it's just really fast to get to. One of my favorite spots for a physical fingerprint scanner. The cameras on this phone are excellent, so I think it's got the best cameras on the list. It's a 12 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You also get 4K video, and you also get a 10 megapixel selfie camera as well. Beautiful photos, very vibrant, you know, classic Samsung image processing, very good detail, depth of field. I love the video, just the colors, everything about the cameras I really love. With this guy, the selfie camera is really good as well. That also shoots 4K too. So I just really love the cameras on the S and E. So definitely still excellent for 2021. Now you do have kind of a small battery. It's a 3,100 milliamp hour battery with wireless charging, and you also have reverse wireless charging, so you can actually charge another device with this phone, which is pretty cool, or like some headphones or whatever is compatible with wireless charging. And battery life, I usually get around maybe 6 to 7 hours of screen on time, depending on how you would use this phone. If you're a hard user, the battery life isn't going to seem that great. If you're a light user, it'll be fine. So definitely battery life is just, I guess, kind of okay on this phone. It's not anything amazing. So last is the LG V50. So this is still an excellent phone and really one of the best phones on this list. Now the phone is the Sprint version, but it's having the merger thing with T-Mobile, so you have to know that the 5G, I don't even think is going to work anymore on this Sprint version. From what I'm hearing from V50 users, I don't have 5G, so I've never used it on the V50 in this area, but just do note that if you're still looking to get the V50, you just won't have the 5G. I've seen people online unlocking this phone using it on any carrier, but I'm still not sure if the 5G is gonna work. So somebody will have to let me know that. But yeah, so this phone is still excellent regardless of the 5G. So it's still a very good phone. It's like $300 right now. So you've got a aluminum frame, glass back. It's essentially, the same design as the G8 that we saw earlier, just bigger. You have the OLED display. It's HDR10. It's got a 6.4 inch display, 1440p, 538 for the PPI. Pretty much the same display as the G8. You got the notch. You got the beautiful colors, the deep blacks on this display. Overall, a beautiful high-res display. 10 out of 10 display here. You do have Android 10 out of the box with this phone. It's probably going to take forever, probably the middle of this year before we get Android 11. But you do have the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640 on here. So this is a high-end gaming phone. You will be able to play any game on high, along with micro SD support and 128 gigs of storage and 6 gigs of RAM. You got plenty of storage and plenty of speed on this phone as well. So this phone has some stereo speakers. They're pretty loud, I guess. They're not the loudest stereo speakers I've heard, because the other speakers just really tiny, but for what it is, it's still a very nice set of speakers. You also have the 3.5mm jack with the quad DAC on here, as well as NFC for your mobile payments. So this phone does have the fingerprint scanner on the back, of course, and that is a physical one. It works very fast. You also have the option of face unlock with this guy too. And you do have really good cameras on here, a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide 4K video, and you actually get a dual camera setup up front. So if you take a lot of group selfies, this will be an excellent camera because you have a wide angle lens on the front. So you do have really good image processing on this phone, really good natural colors. Everything on this phone camera wise is really good, and you can actually throw Gcam on here to take it up a notch. I usually do it for like portrait photos. It really steps it up for that portrait photos, but everything is just really awesome about the cameras on here. Very high detail, good dynamic range. Again, if you're having white balance issues, you can use the manual mode on here. That is really excellent on LG phones too. And battery life is super solid on here. Again, I've never used it on 5G, but 5G is basically gone on this phone. But on 4G, you can easily get around 8 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time with this phone. It is a 4000 milliamp battery, 18 watt fast charging along with wireless charging. So again, just an overall solid phone if you can forget about the 5G and the mess Sprint and T-Mobile are making with the merger with this phone, not having the right bands. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.